Recording started. Hello and good evening. Hello, my name is Dr. JOYLYN and this is a talk that I'm presenting based on my work, How to Save Your Marriage Before It's Too Late. Tonight I'm going to share 3 core elements of my relationship remodeling program that will stop the pain and restore the joy and love to your relationship. So, without further ado, here we go. So you are in the right place if you're married and you've started to think about divorce or even talk about breaking up or getting a divorce, but knowing deep in your heart that you don't really want that. You're in the right place if you or your spouse has already decided to separate and you're trying to work it out before it ends in divorce. Or if your spouse has filed for divorce, maybe even you, but are willing to reconsider, knowing that isn't the eventual outcome that you'd really like to have. You're in the right place if you and your spouse have been arguing a lot, and maybe even those arguments have escalated to verbal or physical violence. And you're worried that the only way to end that and break that pattern is to get divorced. So if any of those apply to you, you're in the right place. And I might even also say that some of these are pretty basic but fundamental communication skills that really any relationship can benefit. But when the fundamentals are lacking, then things can go downhill really fast. And even going back to the basics, and learning new things, even in tools that you'll get tonight to turn your relationship around. So who is talking? This person here in the corner of your screen. Hi, I'm Dr. JOYLYN. I'm a doctor of naturopathic medicine and a certified yoga life coach. That's what those initials mean. I'm a creatrix. I've created and I direct the Happiness Clinic. That's my coaching practice. I'm a relationship alchemist. So I specialize in relationship dynamics and communication, sort of turning lead to gold sort of thing when it comes to relationships. I'm a happiness facilitator. I make sustainable relationships and happiness easier to come by. So, hey, nice to have that in your corner. And I'm a person. I'm a woman who's been in a lot of relationships and actually just a person that really has a heart and desire to help others. And with all that I have experienced and done wrong, I feel I'm a good source of Cliff's Notes for what not to do. So I'll give you some of that tonight so that you don't have to make the same mistakes that I did and can learn the easy way instead of the hard way. So what we're going to learn today is how to get your partner to start listening to you and to keep listening to you without being pushy or nagging. We're going to get the instant relationship reframe that I talked about earlier this week, a technique that quickly brings positivity back into your marriage, and not just for you, but for him too. So you both get to have a more positive relationship experience. Also, the fast and proven way to reestablish broken or damaged trust, even when they or maybe you have lied or cheated. Those are pretty difficult situations, not the only ways to break trust, but sometimes maybe put in the harder category. But you can definitely rebuild your trust, and I'm going to show you how to do that tonight as well. So before we get started, I'll just throw it out there that yes, everything I'm about to teach you is proven to work. I've used it, I've given it to my clients, and they use it, and things are changing and their marriages are getting better. Yes, I do have a program where I work one-on-one with women mostly, but all are welcome, helping them to save their marriages. Yes, I would love to help you if we're a good fit. I would like to help as many people as possible. And if you've got a situation and you find that my personality and the information I'm offering is a good fit, I would love to work with you. So yes, at the end, I will tell you how to get going and how to book a free consultation to discuss your situation and see if we're a good fit. And yes, it's also totally okay if you don't contact me. I will not bother you and hassle you or harass you. There is no obligation to do that. So going forward, if you have a question, please ask. If you see me do this, there's a fly that actually is in love with me or something because it's always buzzing around my face and my arms. But that aside, if you have a question, please ask. Just type a question in the chat, raise your hand, just get my attention, and we'll get to it. One more thing, I want to invite you to join me on my private group, Relationship Real Talk with Dr. JOYLYN Maniaci. This is a group I've created for people who are in a situation like you, who are looking for advice, encouragement, and empowerment around their relationships. A lot of what is available through social media is basically trash talk, meaning it has very little value. It's a Disney version of love and what love is supposed to be and how to manage relationships. And also just a lot of man bashing and sort of just dump him and start over, which doesn't, sometimes it's not just complicated, but it's not what you really like to do. So for those of us who've had a good relationship and it went sour and we'd really like to turn it around and save it so that we can save our marriage, save our finances, this is a group that can really be a benefit to you. And every Wednesday I do a power hour at noon where you can either send in your questions or advance or join me on the live video, and we can talk about things in relationships in a way that you can get information and tools that you need to make your relationship better. Our families sometimes are often maybe trying too hard to be in our corner and aren't objective. Maybe we're embarrassed to talk about it because there's been a lot of back and forth, and so it's hard to talk about it, but this is a safe group for you and access to a coach. So how does it get even better than that? So let's get started. And the number one first thing I said we're going to talk about is how to get your partner to start listening and keep listening without being pushy or nagging. In fact, he's not even going to know you're doing this. So when it comes to being listened to and requesting and getting cooperation, you have probably tried some of these things that didn't work. Asking more frequently or forcefully. The frequency is often the part that becomes nagging or annoying, and the forceful is what becomes demanding. Perhaps you have expressed irritation or anger when you have to ask for things that you think are obvious, or when he doesn't do what you asked, even if he said he would, or maybe he never agreed, but you get annoyed. Perhaps you've tried justifying your request and stating what obstacles you are facing and how reasonable your request is. Or maybe you've been trying to tell him how you feel so that he knows his lack of cooperation, his postponement and procrastination are affecting you negatively. And maybe you've just, started to only ask for small things or give up altogether even asking him for help. Well, that's not working, and here's why it won't ever work. When you ask more frequently or more forcefully, that sets the wrong tone. It's what John Gottman at the Love Lab at UW Seattle calls harsh startup. It's almost like putting a hurdle in front of whatever you'd like to happen next, whether it be cooperation, listening, affection. When you start with this negative tone, either the tone of your voice, the look on your face, your body positioning, it creates an obstacle in and of itself. And so when we are asking more frequently, more forcefully, we're setting the wrong tone and sort of eliciting the opposite of what it is we'd like to get, which is cooperation. Expressing irritation or anger when you have to ask for things that are obvious. This doesn't work because expectations kill joy and contribution, and they set you up for failure and disappointment. Now, a big part of the problem is what is obvious to each of us. You and your husband have had completely different cultural and gender training as far as what to look for. in social relationships, in environmental spaces, what we are been trained to look at and for is very different between a man and a woman. And so much, if you have any differences in cultures, but so much even in between families. So what is obvious to you, there is quite a good probability that that is not obvious to your partner. And so that will immediately set up some miscommunication there. But then expectations kill joy and contribution. They set you up for failure because you have this idea in your head of how things should go, so that if they don't go that way, you're irritated, frustrated, or disappointed. And what happens is when we get this idea of how things should go, we may be getting our requests fulfilled, but if it's not matching that expectation, we don't see it, we don't miss it, or we don't appreciate it. So that's a big problem with expectations. Expressing irritation and anger when he doesn't do what you asked, that also has that negative tone, but that's very demanding. Versus requesting, when you just ask for something and they get to say yes or no. When you become demanding and you are expecting them to do it, there is little room for autonomy. And autonomy is actually a basic human need, so that when you become controlling, you will elicit defensiveness and increase the resistance and decrease the cooperation that you've got going for you. It's almost like you create this dynamic, this power dynamic that sets up a power inequality, and whoever's on the bottom will resist. That's just what happens. So that when we come at it with that tone and demanding versus requesting, we're dishonoring the equality between us, and we'll be eliciting resistance, defensiveness, and not getting what we want. Or if we do, it's not going to be with a joyful attitude. Telling him how you feel so that he knows how he's affecting you actually confuses the issue, and it dilutes the request. So your actual request becomes unclear. Partly because of how men are socially trained, they don't know how to deliver for you. They very much want to. That's a male pattern, a male brain. They actually do want to contribute to you and be there for you. When you start talking about feelings, they don't know how to do that. They don't know, and let me guess, if you're anything like me, that when you do talk about feelings, you don't want him to fix something, you just want him to listen. But when you're actually making a request, now he doesn't know if he's just supposed to listen or if he's supposed to do something. So there is a confusion of what is actually being requested. And that will decrease compliance, because there's just a lot of miscommunication going on there. Also, the human attention span seems to be getting shorter. And the more words you put in front of that request, the less likely the attention is going to stick around long enough to hear the request. So putting all this extra information about feelings before it confuses the issue and makes the request less clear. Only asking for small things, or even giving up asking altogether, actually assumes noncompliance, and it diminishes confidence and trust. It actually almost sets a contemptuous tone, and contempt is really pretty much the death of a relationship, as far as it is very disrespectful. So that when you're already thinking they're not going to come through for you, and that's what you assume, you've really, in a lot of ways, communicated the lack of trust and confidence that you have in your relationship. And even sometimes people do this because there is an investment or some rallying and other social support you can get for being a martyr, and having things just all be up to you and things like that. So you just have to, it doesn't ever work, because then you're a martyr and you don't get help. And if you do get help that you would like to have, then you can't be a martyr and get the social support you want. So that's one of the reasons, like, that it doesn't work, and it won't work. So what do you do instead? Okay, like, I don't know about you, but I have done all of those things that didn't work. And when they didn't work, I wish I would have said I immediately tried something else, but I actually just tried harder to make those work, and really just made my life harder and my relationship worse. But now I know here's what to do instead, and it's what I call sweeten the tart. What it is getting clear on what you're asking for, meaning the actual outcome that you'd like to have. You need to get clear with yourself. Is it that you want him to listen to your feelings, or do you want him to actually do something? Or is it both, and you need to ask for both and be clear about that? Are you wanting to be a martyr, or are you wanting the actual help that he's giving? We need to be clear on what it is that we would actually like to have done for us or receive. So that's going to make requesting it a lot easier, is if you actually know what it is you'd like. And let me tell you, when you're in a stress situation, sometimes you don't know. And it's okay if you don't know, but give yourself a pause so that you can have that clarity, because that will improve your communication so much. Next is to call him by name. Using his name immediately personalizes and humanizes him. It gets him to recognize that you see him as a person. You can also use a pet name or any name that is likely to elicit cooperation. So you're not going to say dummy, dumbass, whatever kind of derogatory term may have worked its way into your language with each other or about each other. That kind of label is not going to elicit cooperation. So call him something that's likely to have him, that encourages him to help you. Lover. Sometimes you can use friend. Strong man. I use tall guy sometimes. Hey, tall guy, I need something up there on that shelf. But if you're just at a lack of cute, fun names, use his name or her name. Then make your request. You've gotten clear on what it is you'd actually like. Ask them for what it is that you'd like. You can, this one is optional, but tell them how it will contribute. Because we're in this relationship and we're in it together. And deep down, even though it might be kind of buried at the moment, we really do want to help each other. And some of the miscommunication, we'll get to this, and frustration we have is not being appreciated because nobody asks us to do anything, or nobody recognizes when we are doing something. So that if you can tell somebody, hey, this is how it's going to make my life easier and better, and you could come through for me, that's actually something that we like and enjoy doing for people, especially men for women. And then you stop there. That's all the information that you need. You don't have to justify the request. There's not about how reasonable, how rational or logical it is, how fair it is or unfair it is that you have to ask. All of that's being left out. So you're going to keep it simple, sweetheart. Just keep it to the request. And then say thank you when he fulfills it, if he fulfills it. Make sure you say thank you and show your appreciation. That's the sweeten the tart and how to request things. Now, here's why it works. It softens the tone. You're not leading with any negative emotions, extra justification, rationalization, and no extraneous information that kind of dilutes or makes the request get lost. So it softens the tone. It simplifies the communication because the request is clear. And it decreases the resistance and defensiveness because there is no demanding. With that softer tone, the demanding has become a request. With using his name, he understands that you see him as a person, as an equal, and there's respect there. So that resistance and defensiveness come way down. And it works. So you're encouraged to keep doing it and using it this way. This is respectful communication, and it's very effective, and it works. And what you appreciate appreciates. I'll say this again later, but when you actually say thank you and mean it, it shows that it wasn't a demand or an expectation. It's a genuine gratitude for you, the person I have named, fulfilling my request and making my life easier. Thank you. Thank you for doing that for me. Thank you for coming through for me. And when you show appreciation, that appreciates. That's what works for them so that they're encouraged to do this more often. So sweeten the tart. You can feel heard, feel appreciated, and be a team together. So a couple of questions that have come through on other avenues this way is, why is it up to me? Why is it up to the woman to do this? And the short answer is, it's not. What is happening is there is a paradigm shift, and a lot of us are finding ourselves in the leadership position because we recognize a problem and because we're actually seeking solutions. We are the leaders. So real leaders take action and initiate change. And this is something that you can do that works, that will change the tone of your relationship. So it's not that there is any hard and fast rule that it's the woman that has to do this. If you're a man and you're watching this, definitely use this. Call her by name. Ask her nicely. Don't expect or demand, and she will be much more likely to cooperate and contribute. The defensiveness and resistance will go down. It can work either way. It's just that women are the ones that tend to actually seek this kind of advice. I talked about what to call him or her. Use their name in a sweet tone, might I say, or use a pet name that is likely to elicit cooperation, like lover, helper, strong man, muscles, something cute that way. And what is different about this is it is simple. It's actually elegant because it's simple and it's so effective and efficient. And it's different because it so much changes the tone by leaving out a lot of extraneous information that we feel very there's like this, the nagging is actually on the inside, that this extra information about feelings or fairness or justification needs to be included. But when we leave that out, it actually simplifies. And it's almost like, when you have a garbled telephone line versus a clear one, it just makes it clearer what's actually being requested. And that's kind of what taking out all the static information is doing. And so it works. It really works. And the story that I have for this one is, my husband, actually, this worked. I had learned this and I had written about it, and at that time I had, a corporate position where I had to get ready, go to work, and he doesn't. He's an event, so he does gigs and he's working a million hours and then totally off. And he was home just sleeping his head off while I'm getting ready for work, and for some reason I just thought that wasn't fair. And I really wanted coffee, but I did not actually plan appropriately and put in a good enough amount of time before me getting out of bed, getting ready, getting the dog walked, to actually make coffee. If I wanted my hair curled, and I was already curling my hair, and you just can't do that halfway. So I was getting irritated with him for not knowing what was going on, and that I had a lot to do before I could even walk out the door to go to work, and he's just sleeping. So what's the deal? And I could feel myself getting irritated and it growing. And I was like, wait a minute. We actually did that, I think, a week before, where that was how would you like to make me coffee kind of attitude. And didn't go over well. I didn't get coffee and I left pissed off. So I was like, okay, I can do this different. I coach people about this. I'm going to do this. And I actually just went into the bedroom and I laid on top of him and I kissed him and I said, hey, lover, would you like to make me coffee this morning? Not actually the clearest request, but because the tone was soft and I called him a name that elicited, and I wasn't telling him about how much I needed and all what he wasn't already doing, he actually looked over and smiled and said, I'd love to. And he was out of bed, lickety split, making me coffee so that I had a warm cup of coffee on my drive and a kiss out the door. It was magical. And it was so simple. I just had to rein in the feelings that really wanted to be like, he needs to know how irritated I am right now. But if I just left that information out, everything else flowed smoothly. And so just practice this. Try it out, experiment with it, and play with it, and things can dramatically change. All right, next up, the instant relationship reframe technique that quickly brings positivity back into your marriage and more ease into your life. And if there is a reason to work on your relationship, is to have more ease in your life. Why be in a relationship if it's going to be a bad relationship? So that's make your life easier so you can benefit. And when you do that, his life will also. So let's talk about how to get positivity in there for both of you. So what you may have done that hasn't worked is talk about what you don't like or what you don't have or what you don't want or what you want to avoid. We especially do this in relationships. We definitely want to avoid past heartbreaks and surprises or something like that. So we talk a lot about what we'd like to avoid. We talk about what we don't like, what isn't working for us. Oh, he never does this. He never says this. I don't ever get flowers. And we talk about that. Trying to fix what isn't working. Our reality is very, very keen on identifying problems and then saying, if you fix the problem, the solution is that's how you get there. Perhaps you've tried this. Trying to prevent the reoccurrence of past failure or pain. Like I said, past heartbreaks is something that we've all wanted to avoid and forget, really. Getting clear on what he needs to fix or change. I have done that. That's what a lot of my clients come to me, telling me what it is that their husband needs to do different. And he's not the one that I have on the phone, so that's not the one that I can work on. But getting clear on what he needs to fix is something that doesn't work. Or assuming innocence or powerlessness. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So, why those things don't work and why they won't ever work is when you talk about what you don't like, what you don't want, what you don't have, or what you want to avoid, trying to prevent the reoccurrence of past failure or pain, it puts all your focus on the past. It's like driving while looking out the rear view mirror. You're going to crash because all of your attention is on what's already happened. It's on the past. And even if you're trying to do it to avoid something, you have to keep looking back. So it's just putting focus on something that's already happened that you can't actually change. Now, talking about what you don't like, what you don't want, what you don't have, what you would like to avoid, that also undermines your confidence in yourself, in your partner. Because when you talk about these things, one person that is always listening and always recording is your subconscious. And when you talk about these things, it gives you some messages about what you deserve, what you can expect in life, what's possible or not possible. And so you are giving yourself messages that kind of deteriorate your confidence because you're so aware of what it is that you don't like that's showing up, what you don't have that you wish you was there, what you want to avoid that you're scared of. And those are the things that are keeping your attention. Trying to fix what isn't working, put your focus on the problem. Now, I did this for a long time because I'm a very logical person. I'm a weird very feelings, but very logical as far as I wanted things to make sense. And it made sense that if there was a problem, you would fix it. And I like fixing things. So, and I like working on relationships and talking about feelings. So let's just talk about it and we'll fix it, right? No. What's unfortunately magical about this is our creative abilities to create things by putting our attention on them, so that if we put our attention on a problem, it becomes bigger or there become more of them. So that even if we kind of fixed or addressed something else to fix would pop up because my attention was on fixing something. There had to be something to fix, and so something to fix always showed up. That's our actual creative powers. Getting clear on what he needs to fix or change will actually create antagonism or opposition, a lot of defensiveness and resistance. And it kind of gets us out of taking any responsibility or diminishing our own contribution to the problem. So it's very convenient for us to kind of sidestep and get out of the discomfort of admitting that we're doing something that's not working, or going through the discomfort of changing something that's very habitual and comfortable at the moment, and just make it about what he needs to fix or change. But that makes a fixation on him to fix something, and anything that starts with a fix probably doesn't really work that well in a relationship. But it also puts your focus on him, which is something that you can't control. And if you try, you're going to feel like the fury of a teenage girl, because nobody likes to be controlled. So that when you try to control something that's out of your control, it's going to blow up in your face. Assuming innocence or powerlessness avoids responsibility and diminishes your own power to be part of a solution. It diminishes your own contribution to both the problem and the solution. So that if you're unwilling to look at what it is that you're doing, or thoughts that you're choosing, or ways that you're behaving that are part of the problem, and think that it's entirely them, you basically said, I'm powerless. And again, telling your subconscious, see, nothing I do matters, I'm powerless here. But then assuming innocence, when I did that, it was so subtle, because I actually was invested in my worthlessness, and I really didn't think that anything I did mattered. So I could say or do anything because it didn't matter to him and I couldn't hurt him. I actually caused a lot of pain for him, because he does have feelings. I just didn't think I was important enough for him to feel anything about me or listen to what I said. And I was wrong about that. He actually did care about what I had to say. So when I said mean things, he really felt a lot of pain that I just was pretending just didn't happen. I was so innocent. And that doesn't work. That just adds more pain to the problem. So what to do instead? This relationship reframe that can actually be instantaneous, but you can talk about things that are going well and things that make you feel good. Now, when I talk about feeling good, light, bubbly, spacious, expansive, hopeful, optimistic versus right versus superior. Those sometimes feel good, but they are a little bit contractive and compressive, and you have to work really hard to defend them. But when you talk about things that are going well, you notice more things that are going well. There's more things to talk about. It's actually a happier conversation to be a part of. For a lot of us, I know for me, definitely, this was not habitual, because this was not anything that my family did. Everybody kind of, if they said something positive, there was kind of a critique, how it could have been better. There was always kind of like this little slight that kept you a reality check, is what everybody sort of thought of it was, but it was really just kind of undercutting anything good. And if you talked about things going too well, then you almost made yourself a target for, hey, come at me, I'm having a good time and I'm out of control. So then some criticisms would come and make sure that you were kept in line. But we can change our habit and talk about things that are going well, that make you feel good, that will actually lift you up and tell your subconscious what you deserve, what you're capable of, and actions you're taking to do that, and give your subconscious more positive messaging and even self-motivate. What you can also do is talk about the future that you'd like to have, not the past that needs to heal or would like to avoid. Yes, there might be some past trauma that needs to heal. But if we talk about always how it still needs to heal, it always stays in a state of needing to heal. So look at the future, talk about the future and how it's going to feel when you are healed. What are you going to do different? What are you going to be experiencing then that you're not able to now? But think on that. But then, let me give a caveat. Don't use the words wish or hope, because that will keep it in a future that is always outside of your reach, like a carrot dangling on a string. I wish or hope, I can never reach it. But talk about, I'm going to have this. I'm going to be this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to accomplish this. Here's what I'm doing that's getting me closer to that. And when you start changing the way you talk about yourself, your subconscious starts to get your attention, or you get your subconscious attention. Here's the instant relationship reframe that brings positivity to both, is talk about your partner in a way that exalts you. Instead of running them into the ground and being able to name everything that they do that annoys you and how they've let you down on so many instances, that makes you a bit of a loser for picking such a loser. And your subconscious knows that. Your partner also knows and picks up your tone and how you feel about them, so that no matter what they do, it's not good enough, and they might even give up trying. But if you talk about your partner in a way that makes you look lucky in love, brilliant, a big catch, he's a catch, so you're lucky in love, that lifts you both up. Also use I messages. A lot of us, you need to do this. You know what would be better is if you did this, and this could change, and if you only did this, and can you just recognize, and can you listen to me? Start using I messages. This is what I'd like. This is the future I see me being a part of. This is what I think a relationship would be fun. Hey, I think it'd be fun if we did this together. And start talking about what I would like, so that you get clear on what it is that you like, but you also get less defensiveness by talking about what you should do. Now I'll get to that in a minute. Also, again, say thank you more often. Definitely say thank you. Start looking for reasons to say thank you, and more things to say thank you will show up. So here's why this works, even though I've already said part of them. But when you put you shift your focus away from the past and away from the problem, you prioritize the future, and you prioritize the solution or the contribution or blessing that's available right there. So instead of seeing everything as a problem, you can see everything as a blessing that's on its way. It's working its way out. Instead of looking at a past you'd like to avoid, you get to look at the future that you'd like to create that will actually, in not too distant of a future, be the reality that you live in the present. Why it works also is you change, like I said, the message to your subconscious about who you are, what you deserve, and what it is to be looking for. You get clarity on you, on your thoughts, your feelings. It makes you more vulnerable. And when we've been kind of misled to thinking that vulnerability is a weakness and a weak point, and where somebody's going to take advantage of you, but vulnerability often elicits protectiveness and affection. Think of a baby or a puppy. They are super vulnerable, They can't walk themselves. They can't talk and ask for things. But what do we generally do? We want to protect them. We want to care for them. Even more so than grown adults, So that when you're vulnerable, you're actually not more likely to get taken advantage of or made fun of or anything. You're actually less likely to elicit defensiveness and resistance, and actually start calling in affection and caring. And gratitude here is an alchemizer. What you appreciate appreciates. I said it before, I'll say it again and again and again. When you say thank you, the thing that you say thank you for, the person you say thank you to, gives you more. You get more of things to say thank you for. And if you can't find something, then look for something. There is so much research coming out about the alchemical properties of gratitude and how it actually rewires your brain so that it changes you from a past and problem focus, that these synapses have been hardwired and fired over and over again, so they become a habit, to actually untangle those and create new synaptic patterns that will actually gear you towards optimism and positivity, so that more of that will show up in your life. And another reason that this reframe works is because you get positive attention. You're going to have fresh content. You're not just going to be talking about the past, the dead past, over again, beating the dead horse. You're not just going to be talking about the negative stuff and over again, we've heard this, he's not, you get fresh content, because when good things show up, then you want to talk about those. And then if you're talking about the future you'd like to create and it starts showing up, it's no longer the future. So then you're going for a bigger, better future. So you always have fresh content. A positive attitude, looking forward and up instead of in the rearview mirror back where you're going to crash. And that brings affection from your partner, because you're also recognizing their contribution. When you don't feel listened to, you don't feel appreciated, there's a good likelihood that your partner is feeling that to the same extent. So that if you start appreciating them, you know how good that feels. And to be able to give that to someone, they are going to positively respond to the person that appreciates them. It works. So you can feel good about your relationship by changing how you talk about your relationship. And you can be happy with your partner. Start looking for things to appreciate. Start looking for contributions that maybe you hadn't recognized and say thank you. So, a question that has come up a few times with this is, what if I need to vent? Sometimes your partner's just going to piss you off, or you just have a short fuse that day or whatever, and you need to vent. Okay, is that even, it's not empowering. It's talking about what already happened. It's complaining, but man, it's charged and it's intense. So think about venting as that. It lets the pressure off. Yeah, it's okay. Now, what you're going to have to pay attention to is when you're talking about it, is the pressure releasing or is the intensity amplifying? That's how you're going to know whether you're venting and you're discharging and moving to a healthier place, or are you re-triggering yourself and amping yourself up and getting mad and entrenching yourself? You just have to pay attention. So pay attention to how you feel as you're talking about it, and also pay attention to how many times you tell the story. Some I had a mentor that said you can 3 times, the fourth time is indulgence, and the fourth time then is kind of solidifying it into something, and you'll actually sometimes almost feel, I've done this, it feels a little bit dead. It does feel like the beating a dead horse, like everybody's already heard this, there's no wind in the sails. Because sometimes you might be so pissed or so charged, or the situation is just so intense that maybe saying it once isn't enough. Perhaps the person you told it to wasn't really paying attention. And if you don't feel listened to, you haven't actually been able to discharge. So maybe you just picked the wrong person, or maybe the person you were looking for wasn't available and only got to hear half the story, whatever. Venting is okay. You just have to pay attention to if you're becoming less pressurized, less amped, discharging versus amping yourself up. Some people say, I feel like I'm lying when I talk good about my partner. And that is tragic. Because if they are all bad, why are you still here? If they are really that fundamentally that bad of a partner, maybe it's time to call it quits. But for a lot of us, we feel like we're lying because we're just not used to talking this way about a partner, about ourselves. My family, we were all trained to be very humble. And so, how to do that and make sure, for some reason, arrogance was just so looked down upon. So, in order to make sure that you weren't arrogant, you just self-deprecated, so that it wasn't just talking about my partner like everything was good that was weird. Talking about myself and saying something positive about myself was hard, so that when I started, I either felt like I was lying or I felt like I was having to watch my back, like somebody was going to like slap me, you know. They feel really awkward or like lying when it's not habitual, and all it takes is practice. Now, you don't have to swing for the fences and say, wow, we're getting near divorce and things are really bad right now. I have the greatest partner in the whole wide world. Everything he does is wonderful. Probably not true for you or in general. So, but start to notice things that they do that are good. Maybe he's really good with the kids. My husband's actually really good about always putting the toilet seat down. I really appreciate that. And if that's the only thing, that actually is something to appreciate. What you appreciate appreciates, and then more things come. So start where you are and start looking for things um, that are good, that your partner is contributing to your life. Also, I would actually encourage you to look at ways that you are a contribution to you and how you are or can be a contribution to your partner, and start talking about that too. What's different about this is it's a kind of against the grain of our reality as far as fixing a problem to make something better, using the past as a reference point to make sure that you're safe or your future is good. A female pattern is to relate around problems, especially when man bashing, because it creates this safe topic that we can all relate to, so we know how to talk about it. What's different about this is it's new. We're going to be giving our subconscious new messages that we maybe didn't grow up with or haven't been practicing yet. We're going to change how we feel on the inside. We're going to be paying attention to the messages we're saying to ourselves about our partner, which means we're talking differently about who we are and what we deserve. So there's a lot of subconscious patterning and deprogramming that's actually going on here, even though it seems so very subtle. And will it really work? It totally will. And I had a client who, when we started working, in the first 10 minutes, I knew exactly everything that her husband was doing wrong and what he needed to fix. And I said, okay, well, he's not on the phone, so you're here. So which actually shows to me that you're a leader because you're the one that sought this out. So, hey, let's just look at some of the stuff that's going on and reframe this. And all she had to do actually was look at how many times she used the word should and started a sentence with you, whether it was in her head or actually to him. And just becoming aware of that, she saw how often it was you should, and that the two were actually paired. And bringing awareness to that and knowing that that's going to immediately elicit defensiveness, and then being like, okay, how can we have it be iMessages? How can I get clear on what it is that I'd actually like? And how can I talk about these things that I want him to do? It's because of what I would like to happen. And some of these are actually from a very loving intention. I want you to be around for a long time. You should go to the doctor. But what she's really saying is, I want to spend my life with you, and I want our marriage to be a long and healthy one. But when you say it that way, it communicates so much more loving and caring and affection versus I've just become mom and you've become one of my children, and so I'm just going to tell you what you need to do for your life. And it doesn't work, but this did. And so within the matter of, I think it's a 90-day relationship remodel program that she was in, but in less than half that time. So I'd say 3 or 4 weeks tops. We had a conversation. She's like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. He just asked me for the eye doctor's number. I haven't said anything in weeks. And he's asking me about dietary changes and the eye doctor's number. So it really does work on a very practical, logical, obvious way. All right. So our final point tonight that maybe is the reason that you got on this call, on this talk in the first place, is the fast and proven way to reestablish broken or damaged trust, even in the most difficult situations. Because how do you move forward together if you don't even trust that there's a together? You got to have it. So how do you do it? Well, what might you have tried that didn't work? Well, talking about the situation or asking to talk about the situation seems innocuous enough. You got to talk about this. You got to confront it. So, hey, let's talk. But it's not working. Why isn't that working? Badgering, arguing, yelling, making threats, because you need to talk about it, damn it. Like, this thing has to get fixed, and it's intense, and your pain is intense. And so you might see yourself or your partner escalating when it comes around this issue. You might go the opposite route and hold things in. Stop talking, stonewalling, or just leaving and just not having this. I'm just not dealing with this. I didn't shit the bed, so I'm not going to do anything to make this better. Or it's just too intense. They're badgering, arguing, yelling, so I'm just leaving. But it doesn't work. Crying, throwing things, or otherwise expressing your feelings when you don't feel heard or he isn't listening. Again, there's this intensity of pain that amplifies and amplifies until we escalate and become more demonstrative and sometimes more destructive and violent. And that happens. It doesn't work. We'll talk about why. Threatening or attempting self-harm or harming another. If you've done that, people do that. I have done that. I was younger. It's not anything I'm proud of, but it's kind of a don't know where to go next. Listening to respond or listening so that he will listen to you also doesn't work. And let's talk about why that isn't working, why it's never going to work. Well, talking about a situation or asking to talk about a situation, like, can we talk? A lot of times we have that harsh startup tone, like we talked about in the first point. So that creates a defensiveness. But these words, can we talk, are often interpreted and filtered, and to that brain says, you're in trouble. And it elicits an escape reflex to where they immediately do not want to hear what they've done wrong. They feel like a small child in trouble, and so they just want to run away. So that's kind of why that doesn't work. Badgering, arguing, yelling, and making threats. The one who's yelling the loudest is actually the least likely to be heard. And these behaviors are aggressive, and they can actually trigger a trauma response. And when, this is another talk for another time, but basically, almost everyone has some trauma. It's part of the baggage that we have. A lot of us had it before the age of 7. So that even when we are clear about what that person's doing and they're the reason I'm feeling this way, a lot of it's only that they are triggering something that is actually much older. But when that trauma trigger is brushed, when it's hit, that person responds at the age of the trauma, either them or you. So that when you elicit, if you are badgering, arguing, yelling, and they're a 5-year-old trying to escape, they then start behaving like a 5-year-old. So it complicates the pattern, miscommunication is more prevalent than actual effective communication. Holding things in, not talking, stonewalling, or leaving are quieter, but not less violent or less trauma inducing. If anyone has any kind of fear of abandonment or actual abandonment or neglect in their past, this will trigger that trauma. It also communicates mistrust and contempt. Not even being willing to make eye contact or communicate someone is very contemptuous and actually communicates hatred and belligerence towards another. So it's not any kind of energetic pattern that you would actually like to have in a healthy marriage. Crying, throwing things, dramatically expressing your feelings when you don't feel heard, threatening or attempting self-harm for yourself or another, that's manipulation and controlling patterns. Again, whenever there's an attempt to control someone, that's actually a trauma response that's coming from a time when they felt totally out of control. And again, crying, throwing things, dramatically expressing your feelings, those are very childlike behaviors. That's what children do when they're not getting their way. They cry and they throw things. So when you see that, you have to remove yourself if you're in a dangerous situation, first and foremost. But you can also see that they are not behaving as an adult. They're behaving as a child. So reasoning, rationalizing, pushing harder like you would with an adult won't work. And then it requires a lot of affection and loving is what actually gets a child to feel safe. You can tell that they don't feel safe. That's what trauma and triggering does. Listening to respond, or listening so that he'll listen to you, that is a gift with strings attached. And that leads to resentment and mistrust. So it's kind of like a tit for tat. It's an obligatory sort of thing. There's no free will, there's not autonomy, and there's a lot of suspicion in there. And I will if you will. And so a lot of mistrust within that. So these sort of attempts at getting someone to listen, at getting someone to trust you, or trying to figure out how you can trust them again, they don't work because they keep inciting the original problem. What to do instead is listen. And it's at the bottom of this, but I'm actually going to bring it to the top. A lot of when I'm talking about trauma, you also probably have something that you experienced before the age of 7 that was traumatic, that if triggered, you will be in that spot and behaving as the age of the trauma where that was. So that there's a hurt child inside of you that needs to feel safe. And giving someone space by listening and giving them the gift of that space is a very healing gesture that allows people to feel cared for and safe. So this also applies. You're going to have to also listen to you to rebuild your trust in that the world is safe and that you can handle whatever it is that's going on. So, how do you listen effectively is be quiet. You can't listen if you're talking. This includes listening to yourself. You think you're listening, but a lot of times we're just talking over ourselves. Like, I love chocolate. When your body's like, please, I'm so full, it hurts. Please stop. We're not listening. What'd you say? Why can't you? Um, or we'll talk about something so that we don't have to feel it. There is a part of being quiet, including quiet in your mind when it comes to listening to you. Be open. Don't assume that you know what they're going to say, and be willing to receive whatever it is they have to say. If there is lying or cheating involved, some of what you might have to hear is going to be uncomfortable or unpleasant. Don't assume that it's going to be the worst thing that you've ever heard, but be willing to receive it. And sometimes hearing how you've contributed to a problem can be very painful at the moment, but be willing to hear it, because then you could actually have really great information for how to fix it. And then be willing to receive whatever it is that your little hurt kid inside has to say. The trauma to you might actually seem ridiculous or completely innocuous because you're an adult, so it doesn't make any sense. But to a small one where the world is really big and they're actually physically small, it could be trauma inducing. So listen and be willing to receive whatever it is. Be quiet some more. It's actually okay if you don't have an immediate response to yourself or to the person you're listening to. Don't rush them. It's okay if they don't have an immediate response. Give them space. And be honest. If you're not able to listen, because if there's been cheating or lying involved, and that's a lot of pain, you have to make sure that you've listened to yourself and gotten yourself in a calm enough place to where you can be quiet and be open. And if you think you're there and then partway through realize that you're not there, say that. And that's honesty and that's vulnerability, and that will actually go to build trust. It really will. Why this works is by being quiet, we actually get attention because we're interrupting a pattern without negative or abusive behavior that's going to trigger it. So silence is a pattern interrupt. We are socially trained to fill space with words, with sounds, so that silence actually gets our attention subconsciously. And then when we've been arguing and fighting back and forth, and that's our pattern, when we don't do that, they take notice. So it's really effective. You can quickly correct miscommunication, inaccurate assumptions, and get awareness and understanding of a situation and how to fix it if we're willing to receive the information. There's so much there that if we open our ears and our hearts, the solution oftentimes presents itself. Actually, a lot of times, the willingness to listen is all that it actually takes. Because a lot of people are thinking, they're never going to listen to me. They don't listen to me. And when you do, you've already corrected an assumption. You stop the cycle of hurt, of trauma, of triggering and reaction, because you're not escalating. And by opening the door and being willing to receive new information and interrupting a pattern, you open the door to a totally different outcome. That was not possible operating on old, outdated information, on assumptions, on expectations, and it's filled with noise and nobody's listening to each other. So you stop this cycle. And gifts bridge gaps. Listening is a gift. When you're listening with no strings attached, when you're just listening because you're just like, I have to hear what's going on for you. I don't understand, and I'd like to understand because I care about you, so I really want to know, even if it's how I contributed to your pain, which is not going to be pleasant, but I want to know so that I don't do it again. When you give a gift with strings, without strings attached, you build a bridge. And as you do this, things change because you're doing it different. If you want something different, you do something different. When you do something different shows up, things actually change. You're not just throwing pain back and forth. And the bridge is getting built to where you can actually start meeting each other and building that trust again. Do something different, get something different, and enjoy the change. Trust can be rebuilt. So quickly going through these questions, because I see we're at 8 o'clock and I don't want to take up extra of your time. I don't like when people do that, but If I'm the one who's not being listened to, why should I listen? If you're not being listened to, start listening to yourself. It will start to fill the void so that you don't have to scream and shout at the other person to listen to you. You actually matter, and you're listening, and you giving yourself a gift, and you being willing to receive information about your pain does a great deal to heal the wound inside. So if you're not being listened to, you start listening to you. That's the first place. And then if you're the one that's not being listened to, why should you listen? Quite honestly, they're probably feeling the same. Even though you can't see it because you listen more or you do more of what they ask, there is something going on to where there's a miscommunication, so that even though you can't see it, they may be feeling the same as you. And if you give somebody a gift and it builds a bridge, what does it even matter and anyway? Because once you start building that trust and bridging that gap and correcting miscommunication, the affection's going to start being there. And even if it doesn't happen instantaneously, they are going to start listening to you, because they'll recognize, oh yeah, that's the caring person I fell in love with. I care about them. I want to know what's going on for them, and it will change. If you started off well and then you got mad and started interrupting and talking and going back in your pattern, recognize it and just stop it and say, I need some space. We're not going to do the stonewalling thing or the just turning your back and leave. Just say, I need a little bit of time and space. I will come back, but I have to get a timeout for me. You can do that, but once you communicate that you're not just turning and walking away, so you're not triggering them, that you will come back and that they're an investment, you're invested in building this bridge, it again de-escalates and helps build the trust, because you're building trust in you. They're seeing that you're not doing the same old thing, and they can start trusting you, and you're starting to work together. If he does do the same thing he always does, like I said, don't assume. If he does, well then listen. Is there information that maybe you missed the first time? A tone, a pain, a gesture, a something that says maybe even if his words are the same, something's different about this. Or maybe it's the same, or it sounds very similar, but is there something extra that I've missed? If you listen, you get better at listening, and that will help you in all areas of your life. And you will be doing something different so that things will still turn out different. And will this really work? It totally will. And again, quick, because I don't want to hold you. My husband and I don't know if you've noticed that a lot of the arguments that we had, even though we were super emotionally invested, very intense, yelling, turning our backs, saying I'm going to get divorced, sometimes meaning it, sometimes only half-ass meaning it and wanting to hurt the other, like the bad, the ugly. We were in one of those. And when I tell this story, I still have no idea what the fight was actually about, because that's how it is. We were just emotionally invested in anger, I guess. So I don't remember what it was about, but we'd been at it for, hours. Irritated, getting closer to fixing it, somebody blow the top off and we'd start all over. And finally we're in bed. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm a coach. I've got to be better at this. What can I do? This has gone on forever. How do I actually get a different outcome so that we can stop fighting? And not just stop fighting, but I actually don't want to fight with him. Like, I don't want to get divorced, and I knew that. So I said something, I was trying to bridge the gap, and he threw out something totally snarky. And I said, you know what? That response, that sounds like you're in pain. That sounds like somebody who's in pain comes throw something back that. He said, yeah. And he started crying. I had no idea that he felt so backed into a corner and so disrespected and unappreciated by me that he was actually in so much pain. And it blew me away, because that's exactly how I felt. But since I just stopped arguing and actually listened, and part of listening is reflecting and saying, oh, that behavior is something that people in pain do. Are you in pain? And yes. And oh my goodness, I'm part of the source of the pain. I'm sorry. Because how you just said you feel, that's exactly how I feel and why I'm being so horrible. And why you're being so horrible to me, we just feel the same. I know I don't want to feel like this, and you're feeling like this? That's awful. Can I give you a hug? And we melted. I gave him a hug, and that argument was over. I don't even know what it was about. Um, but we went to bed embracing. So that being a pattern interrupt and listening actually really does work. Do you guys have any questions here? I know we're over time. If you do, feel free to email me, and or join Relationship Real Talk with Dr. JOYLYN and throw your questions into the group, and I'll get them there. So here's what we learned today. How to get your partner to start listening to you and keep listening to you without being pushy or naggy, by being clear on what you'd like, calling him by name, keeping it simple, sweetheart, and showing gratitude, saying thank you. The instant relationship reframe technique that brings positivity back into your marriage for both of you is talking about your partner in your marriage, in your life, in ways that lift you up and cultivate and express gratitude for those things to the person that's bringing them. The fast and proven way to reestablish broken and damaged trust, even if there's been lying or cheating, is to listen. Listen to you, listen to them, no strings attached. Start building a bridge. And here is what you got to remember from today. If nothing else, there is nothing wrong with you. Just because you're here, if there's relationship problems, that is not evidence that there's something wrong with you or your partner, or that it's too far gone. You have the power to change things, and now you have 3 tools to use to change them. And it's not that you should or that you have to, but you can. And if you use these tools, things change when you do. It's okay if you don't know what to do or say next. It's actually a good thing. It means you're not on autopilot anymore. You're actually going into a creative endeavor and opening doors to new possibilities. So if you're interested in going further and working with me individually, here's how we can work together to save your marriage. It starts with a free consultation, and that's just a 15-minute conversation about what's going on for you and for us to talk and make sure we're a good match. It's not a sales pitch. There's no pressure. We're just going to talk and make sure that my services fit what you're looking for and that you feel comfortable with me. Once you've decided, yeah, that's the way we're going to go, you'll have an intake appointment. That's the first coaching session that includes a more in-depth conversation to get clarity on the goals so that we're being future focused from the very beginning and creating a plan to realize them the fastest. Because that's the big thing with coaching is where you are, we're immediately moving forward towards what it is that you'd like to have. We untangle the past as necessary, but that's not our reference point. But that's your first session is your intake appointment. From there, you have active coaching for the next 11 weeks. We're going to be going into your strengths. We're going to be looking at obstacles. We'll have more tools like this. We'll practice them. So it's not just talk. It's not all theory. There's some actual practice. We're going to have some interesting dialogue to really get into where are you limiting yourself and telling yourself that things aren't possible. What is it that they're doing that maybe is annoying you that there's a workaround instead of trying to blow through and convince them? That's what coaching is going to do, and it's going to change the entire dynamic of your relationship. And then your step 4 is actually to celebrate your renewed strong marriage and the increased attention and affection that you're getting from your partner. I can't wait to celebrate with you. So if you're interested in that, definitely request your free consultation. In the email, I will send you an email with a replay, and I'll also give you the link to request your free initial consultation so that we can get started right away. If those papers aren't signed, there's time. And we can save it. We can save your marriage and turn it around so that it's something that you're proud of, something that you're excited to create a future with this person, and happy to talk about it and share your experience and all the goodness and affection and delight that's definitely possible for you. I'm living proof and my clients are living proof. So I'd love to be able to work with you. So definitely request your free consultation if you're interested. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to seeing you in the Relationship Real Talk group. Thank you. And if there's no questions, we'll say good night.